1. I used to live in a haunted guest house for about a year. So many crazy things would happen that I have absolutely no explanation for. It's a bit long, but here is a list of things I remember would happen. Weird noises and voices. I'm hearing impaired, so I wear hearing aids, and I know that spirits tend to communicate through electronic devices. I would hear voices and laughter quite frequently. I had a roommate, and I swore to him that I kept hearing these things. One time I heard laughing again, and I asked him, "Do you hear that?" And he said no. I told him, "They're laughing right now, it's loud, you can't hear that?" He couldn't hear anything. My items would be moved around. I remember this one time I found my vase with flowers in my laundry hamper. I was like, WTF. I had only gone to work that day, and my roomie hadn't been in the house that week. I texted him and asked if he put my vase in the hamper, and he said no. As far as I know, nobody had access to the house, including the property owner. My roommate told me that he had his ex come over one time before me, and she claimed she saw an older man with a beard behind him when he was talking to her. It was only a split second and he disappeared. He wasn't able to see him, but his ex did. I probably saw the same older man with a beard. I was headed to bed and I saw an apparition of an older man with a beard. I ran out my room so freaked out and told him to sleep with me. I was very afraid of sleeping alone. We slept in the same room for a few months. I would constantly get sleep paralysis. Every single night at that place. I wasn't stressed out or anything, even though the place was haunted, but every night I had sleep paralysis. I wouldn't get sleep paralysis anywhere else, just that place. My roomie found a tube of lipstick rolling on the floor. He asked me if that tube of lipstick was mine. It wasn't. I asked him maybe if it was one of his girlfriends. He said it wasn't theirs. It just appeared out of nowhere. He would have random objects appear to him, not belonging to anyone we knew. These spirits were tidy. There have been several instances where I'd leave my bedroom with my shoes thrown around and my bed unmade. I'd come home to my shoes being nicely put away and my bed made. Rumi says he never tidied up my personal space. After all these instances, I decided to install a security camera, with my roommate's permission, of course. I would see him come into my room. I had the only bathroom. Weird layout, I know. But he would never touch my stuff. The camera also came with night vision, when movement is detected. Once again, I'd leave my place untidy. Rumi was never in my room. Nighttime falls, and the next morning my shoes and bed are made. Camera didn't pick up anything. Nothing would ever happen during the daytime, just at nighttime with my stuff being moved. Finally, I caught movement. I was spending my usual weekend with my boyfriend, now husband, and something triggered the night vision on my camera. It looked like someone walked right in front, and then you see the outline of a little girl, and a shadow, possibly a man, walking. The video only lasted 5 seconds, and they were gone. No, it's not a light from the window. The guest house was too far away from getting lights from the street, and the curtains were blackout curtains. Not a bug either. I don't know how bugs can look like what was on the video. I remember sending the video to a medium, and he said it's definitely spirits I caught on camera. He told me, before I could even mention it, that there's a young girl and an older man haunting the place. The only history about the house was that the property used to be abandoned. Homeless people would stay there and teens would use Ouija boards there. Rumi reference since he's from the area. That's a possibility for the haunting. 2. I just moved into a new house and I'm scared. I've been living here for about a month now. It is newly constructed by a couple of years. The first couple of weeks, I felt so bright and cheery, everything was great. I got great vibes from everything about it. It felt like I had made a great decision. Also, to preface, I do have a carbon monoxide detector. I put it on first night. My first couple of nights sleeping here had already started. I would have auditory hallucinations right before falling asleep, which I've never had before. I would hear a whisper in my ear. The first one was, "Hello, how are you?" And I quickly snapped awake. Then it's been sounds of yelling, people bustling around me, etc., etc. But I quickly snap up and nobody is there. I quickly started having vivid nightmares every night. I don't usually have vivid dreams, and haven't had nightmares in forever. It would be things like seeing the inside of my body and my heart was infested with larvae. They were squirming in and out with the tide of my blood. I'd see my house swarming with infestation. I'd be hurt, tortured, and killed. My insides were usually always rotting and crawling with bugs. I shrug this off, as it's just dreams, even though it's scary. On the third week, everything went downhill. I decided to do a full tank change on my axolotl tank. It falls and crushes my fingers and leg. Then I discover a large ant infestation in the tank below it. They were so disgusting. They left a black, gooey grime everywhere they were, festering in corners, crawling over one another. It made me retch and gag. I quickly went out, vacuumed, sprayed, and placed traps. I was done with the tank change when I noticed all of the poison ants start running to the inside of the tank below, drowning and killing themselves in it. I emergency move the fish into another tank, and a pregnant black widow crawls up from the side. I spray her down and move her out. Then a mystery hole appears in the drywall. Spiders crawl out, crawl on the ceiling, and jump onto me from the ceiling while I'm in bed. I have a high loft bed. Pest people have no clue what made the hole, but it keeps getting bigger. You find no termites or cause. Then I notice the shelf is breaking. I go out to buy a new shelf, and those catches on fire while I'm in it. I leave and go wherever else I can find a new shelf. Get one and move my tanks onto it, when all glass on tank breaks, and they all fall. This is a new tank, less than a year old, and a good brand. I put them in a bucket and buy them a new tank. I clean and add a new filter, a new heater, feed them good night. I wake up and all of their skin is falling off and they're half dead. I emergency change the water. It does no good. Then my cat gets fleas, and I don't know where. He starts to retch and vomit and is peeing blood. Half of my electrical appliances meet their end in a few days. I threw away so many things it pains me. Things of my fish, extension cords, vacuums. My hair curler fizzled and burned. The heater on the tank stopped heating and instead sent electrical shocks. This all happened in a few days. After the hello and the dream. You could say it's just bad luck and bugs, but it's too much at once and doesn't feel right. My dreams, they try to warn me. And this whole time there is some rhythmic tapping in the ceiling. No scurrying, AC, heat off, no water damage. It knocks every hour or so. Sometimes it's short knocking, sometimes it's long. It's always from the same spot. Sometimes there's a bang. That one happens in different spots, usually above my head. Sometimes I hear knocking at the door, and when I go to answer, nobody is there. I keep seeing stuff out of the corner of my eyes. No figure, just the shadow of light moving across the room. It feels like large bugs are crawling under my skin all the time I'm in the house, and it burns like I'm on fire. Although this could be because I'm on such high alert, I am so scared. This all happened in a few days. I left and went to my dad's for a few days because I couldn't take it anymore. I felt so good there. As soon as I come back and step foot inside the house, I just feel so much dread. I feel so much better as soon as I step outside, but one step inside, my stomach suddenly drops. What happened to the good vibes the first couple of weeks? It feels so dark and trapped in here. It used to feel so light and free, but the horrors never end. The pest people spray after I found the ants, but they found no larger issues. They sprayed anyways, because I needed it for peace. The spiders still haunt me. The hole scares me. The whispers, the dreams, the death of my fish, I love them so much. They find nothing in the attic, and I make sure they check it many times. So why does the tapping not end? I sleep with all the lights on in this dreaded house, to the sound of tap, 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 tap. Most often, in about 9s and 7s, it's getting louder and louder. 3. So there was a house in my hometown I have been fascinated with since I was a young child. It was on a main road, and whenever I drove by it, I would try to imagine what it was like living in that house, and I had a clear picture in my mind of what it was like inside. In late 2019, my husband and I were on our way to visit my sister, and along the way we see that the house I loved from my childhood was listed for sale. We were renting and happy, but something told me we needed to buy this house. I looked it up on Redfin and calculated that the mortgage would cost less than our rent, and it was recently renovated, so there shouldn't be any upfront costs. We found a realtor, toured the house, put an offer, and it was accepted in 24 hours. Our offer was accepted in March 2020, right before the housing market exploded and property values went through the roof. The seller was very eager to work with us and correct every single thing that came up in the inspection, and even corrected some things we didn't ask for. She went way above and beyond to make sure we didn't back out. We move in and quickly discover the house is haunted as heck. Never anything sinister, but something in the house definitely wants us to know it's there, and it likes things a certain way. The details could be an entirely different post. 2 previous homeowners have confirmed they've experienced paranormal activity. A person who lived in the house in the 90s actually stopped by to talk about it when he was in town visiting. The thing that concerns me is that these folks have experienced things that were much more sinister than we have. I think the creepy details here are that the house's layout and style are exactly as I envisioned them as a child. It sounds silly, but I used to draw the layout in the sand when I played house as a little kid. And I even tried to recreate the house in The Sims when I was in high school. The other creepy thing is the dreams. As we were closing, my husband and I had some insanely vivid dreams about the house and its occupants. Again, nothing sinister or scary, but definitely a focal point. Notable history of the house. Built by a local mason in 1928 as a retirement cottage for him and his wife. It was her dream home. The descendants of his family are still in the area, and have asked to come over and see it. They have an attachment to the house too. There was a suicide in the house in 2002. The second night we slept in the house, a blade from the ceiling fan in our bedroom became detached and flew across the room. The fan is mounted where the light fixture this man hung himself was located. There were reports of paranormal activity before the suicide. This man had a gambling problem. They got a foreclosure notice, and his wife filed for a divorce in the month before he hung himself. So I really don't believe it was related to the paranormal activity. I guess what I'm wondering is, why do I have such a connection to this house? And how likely is whatever is here to be as benign as it appears to my husband and me? I still love this house, and have no desire to leave. 4. The first time I had ever encountered this spirit, who my little brain at the time dubbed the curly-hair and glasses man, was when I was around 5 or 6 years old. We had moved back to New Jersey from Florida to be closer to family, because around this time, my cousin had passed away at 11 from cystic fibrosis. I also believe this spirit wasn't my cousin, as he was more adult-sized, and my cousin didn't wear glasses or have curly hair. We spent a lot of time with my aunt, uncle, and cousins, and we were all really close. When you walk into my aunt's house, you enter a small closed-in porch before you enter into the living room. If you stand at the front door, you can see straight back through the living, through the kitchen, and into the back bedroom, where a door leads you down to the basement, where my much older cousin made his room. Me and my 2 cousins were in the porch area listening to the radio. I can still remember Gangster's Paradise by Coolio was playing when this event occurred, and I couldn't listen to this song for such a long period of my life because it scared the shit out of me. All of the adults were in the basement hanging out, while the 3 of us girls were playing. Suddenly, I watched the bathroom light turn on, and this darker-than-dark shadow emerged from the bathroom, walked into the kitchen, and disappeared in thin air by the fridge. I looked to my cousins. They definitely saw it too, because they were scared shitless. And being that I was so small and terrified, I instantly started screaming bloody murder, ran my little chubby self through that kitchen and downstairs into the basement, where obviously I was met with all the adults thinking something really bad had happened. We all told them there was a man in the house, to which my uncle and my dad booked it upstairs, and found no one. I explained he was dark, you couldn't see anything, but I saw the outline of glasses and curly hair. If that can make any sense at all. But even though all 3 of us girls were bugging out, they just did their best to console us and make sure we were okay. Fast forward years down the road. I've had my fair share of weird experiences through the years, but what got me the most was that after all this time, that same curly-haired and glasses man had shown himself to me twice in our old house. I was home alone, sitting in the corner of the living room on the computer. My dog at the time was laying next to me on the floor. As I'm playing my game, I got a super strong whiff of lavender. For just a second. And you know that creepy feeling that someone is watching you? Well, Hoss, my dog, picked his head up real quick and looked to my left, right by the TV. I looked over, and that curly-haired and glasses guy was peeking over the side of the TV at me. He pulled back behind the TV the second I saw him. I had quickly gotten off the computer and went outside to just wait for my mom or dad to get back home. I was so scared. And I think I was more in shock because the last time I saw him was when I was so little. I had so many questions that just didn't and wouldn't get any answers. But mainly, why is he here? And has he been here this whole time? The last time I had seen him was in the same house. I remember I had this crazy dream, I have no idea what about, but I woke up completely out of breath. As I opened my eyes, the curly-haired and glasses man was literally standing above me, arms held behind his back, as if he was like, "Hey, you okay?" He was gone in a second, but it was him. And this was the only time I had ever woken up so shaken and out of breath, even to this day. But it was weird, because it was like he was getting closer to me with every encounter. My parents know all about this spirit, and being close to my 30s now, I have never seen him again. I'm kind of hoping he doesn't decide to appear randomly to me, since he showed up so late in my life after the first experience. But the more I thought about it, I realized I was terrified in the moment, given it was a paranormal experience. But I never got bad vibes from him. I have no idea who he could be, and I don't think I will ever find out. But that was the last time I saw him, nearly 15 years ago. And saying this makes me feel so old. Thanks for listening, guys. 5. I have always been sensitive to seeing things. For as long as I can remember, as a child, I wholeheartedly thought it was just a normal part of life. As I grew older, I began to realize that it, in fact, wasn't. I'm also a horror movie fan, ever since the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise began. I can't really remember when I learned about spooks, ghosts, and shadow people, but I loved it, and still do. I've seen things that most people would run away from screaming like a little girl. My mom's side of the family is where I get my ability. They see ghosts, spooks, and angels also. My first story is when my uncle, my mom's little brother, was dying from brain and lung cancer. Cancer is also a horrible disease that runs in my family. The doctors had sent him home to die, surrounded by family. His then wife was sitting by his side, holding his hand. I was sitting in a chair, catty corner for my aunt. My uncle slightly moves his head to the side and smiles. We all could see he was looking past my aunt. I thought maybe their little girl was behind her mother playing or something. My aunt asks my uncle, "What are you smiling about?" My uncle, who can barely speak, says that he saw his sister, my mother, who we lost to cancer many years before, is standing there and smiling, and had told him that she was there to help him, all she could, when it was time for him to leave that earthly body. Cold chills ran all over me from head to toe. My mom and uncle were always so close and loved each other so much. He was the fun uncle, and my mom was the cool mom. Fast forward a few years ago, I'm in my second marriage with 2 daughters and 3 stepsons. We have a huge house on a 40-something acre farm, complete with all the livestock. It took all of us to keep the farm up and running. One night, after a long, hard day's work, my middle stepson came into the bedroom to wake us up. I was the first to hear him, and when I opened my eyes, I didn't see my stepson. I saw 2 children walking towards my husband and I. They were blue and gray hues with dark, sunken eye holes. They were African American. Please don't ask me how I knew that part, I just did. The boy was wearing a pair of jean overalls like the ones they wore back in slavery times. The girl was wearing an old-time dress like the girls did back in these times. They were holding hands and walking towards us. I screamed, waking my husband up with a fright. My stepson ran towards us through the children. They disappeared in a puff. Not only was that the scary part, but the reason my stepson was even coming in there to us was because he had a night terror. He was battling with a red demon who was trying to choke him. He kept reciting a prayer that his grandmother had taught him and his brothers as children, just in case of bad dreams. He said when he finally snapped out of his night terror, he had his blanket tight around his throat and was all tangled up in it. He was a sophomore in high school at this time, and I know it was not a part of his imagination. We moved soon after. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories, episode 275. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I'd appreciate it if you shared the video around with anyone and everyone you might know. Twitter is a good place to do that, and if you aren't following me on Twitter, then you're welcome to do so. Link is in the description. I'm trying to get verified. Okay, let's see. Friday. Possibly get down in some fashion as it is a Friday. Let's see. Hellfreezer's question of the day. Alright, as we are now in the post-release of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which is the sort of thing I love. I love parallel universes, always have since I was a kid. Probably why I like comic books so much. Yes, like, not past tense. So, if you could encounter another you and sit down and have a conversation with them about your lives and the differences in them, and they would have led a different life, would you want to? I'm not sure I would, because there'd be a lot of regret, and you'd learn what might have happened with the roads not taken, the choices not made. And what if they're doing better? What if they're better looking than me? I mean, that seems impossible, but it is a parallel universe. All sorts of weird things could happen. Anyway, leave your answers in a comment below. Okay. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.